the Trevor Jackson Podcast.
I hope you guys been enjoying the conversation. We talked on the introduction. We presented chapter 1 to y'all. We presenting chapter 2 right now. Welcome to reality. If you haven't purchased the book, go to Amazon, purchase the book. Reach out to me. I'll reach out to Erick and get the book to you as fast as we can. This is a very informational and educational book, and I want to welcome the author on the show again. How you doing today, Erick?
I am doing very, very good. How about yourself?
Man, I'm feeling good, man, on this Sunday night. Life is good, man. I just appreciate life's experiences. I'm engulfed in your book right now, and I've read up to chapter 3. But chapter 2, it caught my attention, and welcome to reality, and I'm just excited about it, man. Man, I'm excited. Tell me why you titled it Welcome to Reality.
Well, I've given what I did with this book, which I think makes it very unique. I chronicled the literal stages. I'm a linear thinker.
Okay.
So I like to know what's first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I like to see a line. And a lot of books that I have read on this topic, they don't do a linear perspective on it. They just kind of give you bullets here, bullets there. So what you will see in my book is literally the steps you go through, the literal steps that you go through as a divorced man, from the time when you're married, from the time that you get those famous, infamous words, the emotional overload. So my book is chronicling, it is documenting, it is putting the man in a guide as to these are the physical 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So the one we're on today, which I think is one of the hardest ones, is Welcome to Reality.
What do you
mean?
The
reality.
What do you mean by hardest one? I'm sorry to cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Because you have to accept that your marriage is over.
Okay.
And that is reality.
Except that's a powerful word. Keep going. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, you're good. My approach is to give the guy the straight, which is you get to a particular point. There's a chain reaction that happens, and you have to accept your new reality.
Yeah. I have questions in here about acceptance, because you wrote some of that in this chapter about the power of acceptance. I think that could be a whole book, because accepting things is a reality sometimes could be a challenge to do, because people want to live in a world that they want to live in, but that's not actually their reality. Man. So
for men,
educate me.
For men, we as a group, we struggle with this concept. We do a lot of things. We deny. Some try to get back together. Some will put up this emotional, masculine front of, we do a lot of things, and then at some point in time, the reality will hit you, and that is the beginning of a new life. So that's why I wrote that chapter called Welcome to Reality.
Because that's the beginning of the new life, because that is true, because things have happened in my life to where I had to accept that this is my new normal. This is how my life is going to be.
Yes.
And that's when the chapter and the door closed and the new one opened. And, you said that is true for men.
Yeah.
And when you said that, I heard accountability again, because we have to hold ourselves accountable to be able to accept our new reality?
Think, and I don't know what your favorite choice. What's your favorite choice that your favorite sport you choose to watch?
College basketball, college football,
Okay,
college.
I'll give you an example. If you take a look at any NBA legend, I'm a Kobe guy. I don't know if you're a LeBron guy or MJ guy, but I'm a Kobe guy.
I know where you're going.
And
I know where you're going.
I remember how difficult it was for Kobe to retire. You know, I remember how difficult it was for him to jump, and he no longer had the physical skills to jump, and how difficult it was for him to accept. And for men, we have a challenge of accepting things. You know, we fight, and with a divorce, there is a level of acceptance that has to occur. I don't rush it. I don't hurry it. I can't spoon feed it. My job is to point that out to guys who are going through that. If it's difficult, it's painful, because you're a human being, but you have to be able to get to a point of acceptance.
That's educational on many levels. Not even just divorce, to be honest with you, even though that's what we're talking about because of the book. But that's educational on many levels. The way you use the analogy of Kobe Bryant in sports, and once he realized he couldn't jump no more, it's just in totality in life, it comes a point when you have to accept things ain't working or things are working. Even if things are working, you have to accept it and go deeper into it to get what you want out of it. But that is very interesting. But I want to start off with, I want to ask you a few questions because I took the notes, I read the chapter, and my first question to you that caught me by attention was divorce being the signal to the world that America is on the decline. How does divorce define that the country is on the decline? If you may educate me on that, please.
Excellent question. Because if you go back, and you have to forgive me, and I am a social studies nerd. I have been studying people, civilization, since the 5th grade. I've always been interested in how people relate to each other. Mm-hmm. One of the things that you can tell about a society when it's on a rise as opposed to when it's on a decline is the institution around family. Family is the fundamental element of any society. Mm-hmm. If you take a look at our family, say in the 1950s, 1960s, versus the American family today, you will be amazed at the dysfunctional aspects of the American family. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, in my perspective, as that family decreases, as it breaks down, the society breaks down. And America has been on a decline because, and again, in my opinion, it's because of the American family. The family is the fundamental building block of a society.
I can see that. I can see what you're saying, like physically see it. It's because when I think about how families evolve when they unify and they come together through the husband and the wife both working and learning and educating themselves and putting both funds together to make the child's life easier. And a family structure and household can make the child's life easier. You can pay for college. You can pay for an easier life for your child, and you can live a better life when you have two heads versus one. And when I look at America today, it's promoting separation. It's promoting division. It's promoting new forms of family. I don't want to get into that type of conversation, but new forms of family with same-sex families
being redefined.
I can see how it can destroy the country because it's just not a structure no more. It's not a structural thing that can. I don't know how. I don't understand that why we don't want the families though. What has caused people to not want a family structure, not want to to be together and support one another and stuff. What's the benefit? What people think the benefit is to that or of that?
There are a lot of benefits for society from people's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You would be shocked, but then on the other hand, you would say, yeah, you know what? It absolutely makes a lot of sense. As families decline, people have the opportunity to see people not as humans, but to see them as resources, natural resources, to fund and funnel their particular industry. So this is why I say in the book that even though we as a country do not have the highest, but we are sending a signal to the world that the American society is completely it's changing, it's in a decline, and it's not just at the hands of politicians. It's just the ordinary average people who have a completely different perspective.
You know, not having a family structure and not creating marriages and stuff like that helps fund the prison industrial system.
Of course it does.
It helps fund a multitude of things like
multitude.
I'm trying to think of some, but I can't freestyle like that. It's so many I can't think, but I see.
I'll say this in a very nice political correct way. The medical research complex is another one. That's another one.
That's true.
That's
another. And that was a very good way to say that. That was an excellent way to say that. But
yes,
that's true. So it's financial and capitalist benefits to separation. Okay, I understand.
Yes,
so you furthered the term "happy wife, happy life" and informed me on some new terminology. I never heard of the queen of the castle, or when mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. I never heard of that terminology. When mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. What?
Go out and perform your own research, and you can talk to various women, and they will tell you that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Which says is that if you are married and you have a wife and you have children, the center of your network, your wife has to be happy. She has to have a certain level of attention placed on that. Yeah. I was told, happy wife, happy life.
Mm-hmm.
That has been a mantra I have heard so many times growing up. Mm-hmm. You hear it as a young man, you internalize it. You believe that it is a good guide for men, mm-hmm. but it is an absolute destructive mentality to take that on as a married man. It is not a good mindset because your happiness has to be talked about, has to be looked at.
Yeah. That's true because it seems like you prioritize somebody's happiness over yours, and you're not equal when you do that. You are elevating somebody to a higher standard than you are yourself, and I don't think that's healthy.
And you know what's interesting about that? As you get further along, that very person, the very wife that in the beginning supports that, then she begins to resent you for doing what you did.
Oh, man.
Because then she sees, hey, how can I be with someone who will put somebody else's interest over there? I can't do that. I mean, what kind of, so, I put that in the book because it is a destructive a piece of advice that men, and I got told that growing up.
I can see how a woman could do that too. At first, they be all supportive of it, and then later on down the line, they be like, "Why did you put your? Why you?" Then
you become resentful. You become resentful that you did that. You say, "Hey, I did that because I thought that was going to make you happy."
Yeah,
and then that's when you're in trouble.
Man, I've heard a term before. I wonder if you heard this one. If you don't bring home the money, you ain't getting no honey.
I've heard that one as well, sir.
Yeah, okay. I never heard of the queen of the castle, and if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Those
That's
are.
true. Yeah.
I wonder if men use terms like that. How would that go? In it.
And I look at those things and I try to, we have some ways of examining our own relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is that when you physically get into the act of bringing two people together with different backgrounds, different understandings, and you do that the first 5 years, I don't know how much of our stuff holds up. And especially now, because now it is popularized in popular culture. So those are things that I put in that a man has to start unlearning. And that's part of that reflection process when you're welcoming yourself to reality. Like you do an account of all the things that have happened.
Mm-hmm. Account of all the things that has happened, because that's a good thing that you have to have memory. You need to be able to retain information of what has happened and what can happen and what isn't going to happen now that it's over. You have to have acceptance. You have to accept your new reality. I don't know if you wrote about this in the book, but I heard you use the word culture, and it sparked a question that I didn't write down or nothing. Do you think it's important to marry or to engage with people that has similar cultures? Or it's interesting to me because I never personally engaged with a woman of a different culture.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's funny you bring that up.
I don't know how challenging that would be to date somebody from Australia or somebody from Russia.
I can speak on that, sir. I can speak on that. I tell you what, it's a difficult process. However, it can be rewarding.
Okay.
I think, and I have made the claim that our culture is changing in America. I think our culture is changing. And I was under the same mindset that you just spoke of, which is, hey, I married a person who is very similar culture, geographically, educationally, racially, like all of our cultural things that you're speaking of, pretty much mapped out very well. Mm-hmm. But in the end, none of those things matter. None of those things, all those things that we talk about, they don't matter.
Yeah.
They really do not matter, because the true individual, the real person, the real interest then comes into play. And then as a man, you have to figure out, is this something that you can or cannot do? Mm-hmm. The different cultures, you do have to learn, you have to understand that people don't do things the way that you do. But it would be difficult, but it could be rewarding at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That intrigued me because I never did participate in that, but I see men that has, and some look happy and some get divorced. It's just an interesting thing that I thought that I would bring and ask you if you had any experience on. But let's move along in the conversation.
Yes, sir.
Talk to me about the importance of embracing your new reality after a divorce, and also the importance of conversations with men who have experienced divorce. Yeah, that's intriguing.
Well, that's where I'm at now. Even though I wrote this book, many years ago, about 2.5, 3 years ago, where I've grown from that, I'm actually getting more into that second part. And see, as soon as you get, and here's where I say, just for a timeline purpose, and you will remember the day you hear it. There's a 2-stage process that happens, right? Mm-hmm. Number one, when you physically hear your wife say that you want a divorce, time freezes. Everything in the whole world is put on hold. Mm-hmm. At that exact moment, that exact time, the world stops.
Yeah.
Because you are in shock and you are going through a lot of things. Now, there's some other guys that we need to talk about where they hear it, they keep on moving. We're not talking about that.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation.
They haven't accepted.
Well, yeah. Well, they haven't accepted because they have another game plan.
Mm-hmm.
But you hear this, and then when you down the road, when you get the papers, see, that's a whole nother reality. And what typically men try to do is they try to bear this on themselves, because we do not like to go to other men for help. We have a genetic defect in our system that we don't like to go to other men for help about these kinds of problems. Mm-hmm. And that's why I said, don't take it on yourself. Go talk to someone. Go see a therapist. Go confide in someone. Make yourself somewhat vulnerable, because you have a lot of work to do from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. And that's why you need to have conversations with other men.
Yeah. I think that's honorable, and I agree with that, because like, you can't take that on alone.
We try to.
I know.
We try to.
I know, and we create more pain. Even I'm not even like, I've experienced that. I've never been divorced or whatever. I'm currently married, but I have dealt with that in a breakup, in a boyfriend and girlfriend situation where it's hard to deal with that alone. Still,
yes, it is.
Especially even though you don't have none of the contractual agreements and all of that type of stuff when you in that relationship, it's still, when you love someone and you appreciate someone and you want to create a life with someone, and then at that moment it all ends. You can't deal. It's hard to live with all of that in your head.
It is difficult to do. I was spared a little bit of that because I was in the middle of a pandemic, as we all were. Mm-hmm. 2, I was in graduate school. I was working on. I was writing my dissertation, and I was writing. Thank God that I had something to balance my mental off of. Mm-hmm. But typically, we as men, we try to take it on. Women, on the other hand, and I think we talked about this last week, women have already planned for the divorce way before you find out. Mm-hmm. They have talked to their friends. They have gone to lawyers. They have thought about so many different things way ahead of time, that by the time, and they do a very good job of this. They do a very, very, this is something that men should adopt. And you won't hear me say that often. But this is something that men need to do, because women do it very well. They by the time you hear it, it's already a done deal.
They're past it before they announce it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You said something to me about the time between the announcement and receiving the papers. You said that's a serious thing also. What is that time frame like?
Because some men will do their best to try to deny it. Mm-hmm. Some men will say, whatever, I'm going to pack my stuff and I'm out the next day. Some men will stay and talk and try to reason and say, hey, is this something you really want? This decision just doesn't affect us. Mm-hmm. It affects our children. It affects our careers. So men respond in a lot of different ways. And from the time that you hear those magical words, which you know exactly where you are when you hear those words, mm-hmm. to the time when you know exactly when you get those papers, those are a time that men respond to differently. A lot of guys are going through a lot of emotional upheaval, which you'll see in chapter 3. Mm-hmm. That's a very difficult time, because you literally don't know what to do, because you have been hit on your blind side. Your blind side has taken a hit.
That's when you're in a state of not knowing, ain't it?
That's a horrible state.
Yeah. I can imagine that. Come to think of it now, because you don't know what to expect. You don't have no expectation for tomorrow.
No,
She might change her
no.
mind. She might. That is a crazy
See,
place to be in.
and see, it has really nothing to do about her at that particular point. It's what she's introducing, and the mental that it does on you is a terrible place to be in. A very bad place.
Mm-hmm.
I find it amazing how these NFL quarterbacks that we watch weekend after weekend, how they're able to take a hit if they can see the hit coming. But if you notice, the hits that they don't see coming, those are the ones that make the lasting impact on the game, because they're always watching over the shoulder.
That's true. That's true. I like how you are using sports analogies in this conversation from the
Yeah, I
basketball.
put that in the book specifically because I know, guys, we speak sports as a language.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. If the hit isn't coming, that can knock you out, injure you, put you in the hospital or anything. But if the hit,
but you're always waiting for it, which you may not have to. Hey, the guy on your left side, guy on your right side, depending on how side you throw. You may have the best tackle, the best offensive lineman on that side, but that hit is in the back of your mind all the time, and that's something that women don't know, but it's something that every man who's experienced that, they carry it with them.
Man, that got me intrigued about our relationships after a divorce. I know we don't have to talk about that now, but relationships after a divorce is interesting because my head is on a swivel now, and I'm aware of so much because I've experienced so much that I don't know how a woman could deal with that, or a man could deal with a previously divorced woman also, because she's aware. Yep. She's so aware now that I don't know if the heart is guarded now. The heart isn't open to receiving. That's something that I had to practice in my life to be able to receive, because growing up in impoverished communities and stuff, my heart had got hardened from the things that I've saw. But when I got to a different lifestyle and a calmer and a more educational state, I had to learn how to open my heart again. And I think that that's something that could happen in a divorce.
Difficult. Very difficult.
Because the heart is hardened after that experience. So opening up the heart to somebody new could be, I don't know.
And I could say for me, I haven't had that problem.
Mm-hmm.
I have not had that problem.
Mm-hmm.
Which tells me my heart still works.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. That's a good thing. Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but you spoke about the dangers of failing to address emotional traumas from a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that, I think that if you don't address those traumas, then you become stagnant in life. That's what I'm perceiving. When I read the book, I was like, man, if you don't address those traumas, and the person who addressing them, they moving forward, they living life, they ain't even thinking about that person no more. They doing what they doing, and life is going on. But if you do address them, you can continue to move on. But if you don't address them, that could be detrimental to your life for the rest of your life. So speak to me about why that was written in the book also, emotional traumas.
One of the first jobs that I had, I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. Yep. And one of the first jobs that I had, I worked for a nonprofit organization, and their job was to deal with poverty, social issues before I got into education. And we had a project where we had to go and interview homeless people. And there is a bridge in Atlanta, Georgia, which is still there. It's on I-20 going east. I can remember hearing from different, it's just those things you hear growing up, and you don't know where you heard it from, but there's a source. And there's a bridge, and we actually went to this area in Atlanta and interviewed these guys. And there were a lot of men who were there because of a divorce. There were a couple of guys who had bad terms with investments that went bad, and they found themselves homeless. They found themselves, and we used to ask questions like, well, how did you get here, and how did you get here? But at that time, I wasn't mature enough to understand what those guys were talking about, and that is, men, if we do not, and you can see it in statistics now, but emotional trauma is something that stays inside the body. Divorce creates emotional trauma. Divorce creates emotional trauma for men, regardless of what men say or may not say. Mm-hmm. And you have to find a way to address that. And what I'm learning is a lot of guys, as you said earlier, their strategies just kind of pipe it down. They don't want to talk about it because they don't want to appear to be weak, and that's just not the case. We are human first before we go to a gender.
True.
So we are designed to have the same level of emotions, the same level of intellectual maturity, emotional maturity as women do, but our society doesn't let us do that. So a lot of guys end up in situations, bad decisions, but a lot of guys are dealing with a lot of emotional trauma.
Man, you hit home with that one, because
yes, sir.
What I think about, like, I've read this book by Dr. Joy DeGruy, the post-traumatic slave syndrome, and she spoke about trauma being a part of people's DNA, and it transfers through life on down the line, and I found that hard to believe, but I just heard you say emotional trauma stay in the body.
Yes, it does.
If you don't address them. And that makes me think, like, if you have a child and you have those traumas and stuff, can it pass down from generations to generations of the stuff that they're dealing with?
I can tell you the answer to that is yes. There is a lot of research that's out there, but there's a lot of research that people haven't gotten to. And there's a lot of topics that don't get approved. There's a lot of research. I could just think of a conversation I had with my mom one time, and she shared some things with me, and just in terms of how she grew up, growing up in Alabama, living in a very impoverished area, in a very, very difficult, very racially segregated areas in Alabama. And you're right, trauma has a way. So you have to find a way to unroot it. You have to find a way to be proactive in unrooting it. And for men, this is why I wrote the book. This is what, number one issue that I told you, men and suicide, which we'll get to later on down. It is disturbing to see how men process stuff if they're not given the proper mental health and therapy.
Man, when you said those guys, you seen guys lose it all and end up homeless and stuff under the bridge in Georgia. Yeah. And what happens is those guys, people just kind of know, you know what I mean? It's like it's a cultural thing. Like, that's where they end up, which is very sad. But again, what's the title of this? Welcome to reality. This is the reality that needs to be put out there. Yeah. That is very, I hope people listen to that. Deal with the trauma. That after that question, I'm going to tell folks this. Deal with the trauma. You just heard trauma is transformational.
Yes, it is.
You gotta heal, man. That's the main thing. This is the guide to heal. You have to heal, because this is serious stuff, man. Like, I know somebody heard that it might be dealing with a divorce that's watching this episode that need to purchase the book.
Yeah, and if you are dealing with that, you need to accept the fact that your humanity is way more valuable than your gender.
Yeah. I agree with that. Moving along in the conversation, I'm a person that talks a lot about self-love and loving the self, and having knowledge of who I am and what I will accept. And when I read this part of the book, it said the divorce rate being a byproduct of the social movement called self-love. Now, I said that I'm about loving self and having knowledge of self about what I will accept, but I'm aware that majority women have promoted that and talked about that. And I think they created that from a place of hurt. I'm assuming, I might be assuming this, they created that from a place of hurt. But talk to me about why in the book you said the divorce rate being a byproduct of the social movement called self-love.
Well, with the time that we have allotted for this question, I'll just say this, and you may want to make a note on this one just for the sake of time. When you look at the divorce rate and how it's calculated, it is absolutely one of the most mind-boggling statistics in America, because the whole divorce rate in America is literally not based upon the divorces of couples. It is based upon women, the number of women that are married.
Wow. You say that again, please. Say that again, please.
The divorce rate in America is not based on the number of couples that get married and divorced. It's based on the number of women. Women determine the divorce rate.
Yes, sir.
So since they determine the divorce rate, that's number one. You got to process that. You have to process that. Go to the U.S. Census Bureau, do a deep dive on divorce. Look what that equation is. You'll see on the very bottom. You'll see per 1,000 women, not per 1,000 couples, not per 1,000 men, but per 1,000 women. That's an incredible nugget of wisdom right there. Number two, when you look at that and you pair it with the other study that was done, the study in 2015, which we haven't gotten to yet, you will see that if I am a person, as you said earlier, who literally is thinking about myself, my personal longevity, my happiness, my future, my career, me, when you keep hearing that, then of course you're going to have a divorce rate that produces these numbers.
You individualizing yourself.
You're going to have that. The problem is the men, you and I, we are unaware of this. We have no idea. Men don't spend their time looking into these things. We just hear them and we keep on going. We have our own personal world that we're trying to build. But in my opinion, and I would love to have that conversation with someone who disagrees with me, I think that as we get more into the us as a family, as a community, as an African-American family, as a Caucasian family, however we want to identify, as we move from us and we move into me or I, that's when we get self-love.
That's true. I like that. Because when I do hear people speak, a lot of people speak in relationships from the individual perspective. It's them. They don't even acknowledge the person who they're supposed to be unified with. And that's interesting. That's really knowledgeable right there. Couples don't determine the divorce rate. Women do. Goodness.
It's women.
Yeah.
And you're going to see that theme. There's a theme that's going to consistently go through. You're going to see that theme. The problem is the fact that you and I, we don't know. We are the last to know this. But now, hopefully, I say all of these things in order to help men take on this burden, take on this heavy, heavy burden, so that you don't personalize it. And that's what we do as men. We personalize.
That's a question, if I had to do it all over again, that I would ask my wife. And I
Yes.
know it's more of a us thing by her actions and the things and the ways that we operate, but that is great information for anybody in a relationship to ask your woman, are you prepared to move from the I, the me, the mine, and
To
the
the us.
mind state to the us and we? That's the whole mind state that needs to be, as much as programming as people get to want things and to want a man to be Jesus and
Mm-hmm.
him to be a
Mm-hmm.
superhero and a financial deliverer. They need to,
All those things we hear.
yeah, they program to that, but not program to the we and the my, because the we and the us mentality.
Because remember what we said last time. When you hear something goes bump in the middle of the night,
Mm-hmm.
and you all say, "Hey, baby, what was that downstairs?" Is it we gonna go downstairs and check it out, or are you gonna go downstairs?
Or I don't know what it was. Go back to sleep. The key word was I don't know what that was, baby. Go back to sleep. First word was I.
I don't know.
I don't know what that was. I'm sleepy. Go on back to sleep, boy. Now let's keep it going, man. I
Yes,
never
sir.
heard of Beehive talk.
Oh yeah.
Beehive talk. Educate me and the audience on that terminology, please.
This is a topic that the older people. Once you've been around married couples, and once you've been around just kind of marriages in general, there's a certain code. I've recently had this conversation with an individual, and I'll try to be as discreet as I can on this one, but I'll give you an example. There's a certain level of communication that I believe that men have and versus women have.
Mm-hmm.
Women don't seem to have the same. Well, let me take that back. American women don't seem to have the same cultural boundaries that American men do when it comes to talking about their wives, right? We as men, we don't talk, men do not disclose, we don't talk about intimate relationships with our buddies about our wives. We don't do that.
That's facts.
That would be rude. There's a certain governing body that men just don't do. A girlfriend, a previous girlfriend in the past, that's a different paradigm on the code, right?
Mm-hmm.
But women, on the other hand, generally speaking, seem to have a different level. So that beehive mentality goes back to what we talked about earlier, where women do a much better job of communicating how to do this, how to do that, how to do this when it comes to a man. And they're shared things that you and I, as a man, would not share to our male friends about our relationship.
That's true.
And you have to, as a young man, you have to understand that. I have been told things about my male friends or male, couple friends that I simply didn't need to know. I didn't need to know that.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that there are things about me that were told to friends that they don't need to know.
Mm-hmm.
And that beehive mentality is something that men are completely oblivious to because they think, hey, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't talk about this particular issue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way that we've been socialized to behave and act.
And women are open to having conversations about their relationship, their husband, their sex life,
It's unbelievable.
finances, the everything, just
everything.
Any old body. And I look at that as a way of you're not protecting me or us.
Yes.
Everybody doesn't deserve to have information on our relationship and our well-being. Nobody needs to know what we doing on a day-to-day basis and
Not at all.
our life or our struggles. That's between me and you. Yeah, I wouldn't like that, but that's something that you know I'm aware of, and I think that more men need to be aware of that. And I think some
They do.
men might be aware of that, but I never heard of that beehive talk. How normal do you think that is that men are aware of the beehive talk?
See, I don't think that most men are aware of this concept, because I'm always shocked when I hear certain things, or when I was a married man, I would get things told from my ex-wife about guys that I would know. Even from some of my female friends, they would share things about their husband. I'm like, hey, why do I need to know that? That's an embarrassment. I would not want to share that. That's the source of an embarrassment. That's an embarrassing problem for a man. Yeah. But generally speaking, women don't see it the same way. But here's the one thing that the women who may be listening to this, generally speaking, women do not want to see other women happy.
Wow. You know, I noticed that, like, women need to unify with each other more also, and celebrate each other's wins more, instead of wanting to compete with each other, because I've noticed that about a lot of women. I noticed that through my wife and stuff. People will start to hate on you when they see you happy, or they will start to be jealous when they see you happy, when they should be celebrating you. To be honest with you, it should be a celebration.
We don't have that mentality, though. We just don't. We don't have that mentality. So again, like as you would say, bringing it back to the book, my job is, when you're going through all these things, I have to assume some guys know these things, and I have to assume some guys don't. My job is to educate them off of my interviews from other guys, my own personal experience, to say, hey, some of those things that you saw, conversations was being had that you and I as men, we just wouldn't do. We just, that's not how we're wired. All of this is reality. And for a lot of men, it's hard to process. It was for me.
Welcome to reality. Man,
welcome to reality.
I think that's educational for women too. If women is listening to this podcast, because I think that sharing personal details, it protects the relationship.
Yes, it does.
Because your information don't need to be shared with the world, because it'll come back to you.
No. Yes, it will.
Yeah, and I agree with that, man. That
yes, it will.
You explained my question for number 7 when you answered the Beehive talk, because my question for number 7 was, when sharing personal details, that caught my attention. Should men be aware? Is it not right? I don't do it, but I'm so interested in learning whatever studies you have on this topic. And you just answered the question to number 7, sharing personal details.
Yeah.
That's basically the definition of Beehive talk, ain't it?
It is, because I have personal information on some of my male friends that I don't need to know. I don't need to know that as a man. There's certain things that I don't need to know that. And I find that kind of behavior destructive. I find it, there's no more us anymore. And I think and I've heard something, well, men do the same thing. No, sit down and talk to a group of men. Sit down and talk to a group of men. We have our peculiar ways as well. But when it comes to protecting the family, and when it comes to not divulging like stuff that could be harmful or embarrassing, we kind of keep that kind of close to the vest.
I'm gonna tell you something about me personally that I want to know what you think of this. Is it weird?
Yes, sir.
Because I consider myself to be a different type of individual, but I've been around a lot of guys before, and I've heard them talk about females and stuff, but I have never had a conversation about my relationship, how me and my girl is doing, or life, or none of that. That has always been private with me. My whole life, I never sat down and spoke about how good she is at doing certain type of activities.
Yes. yes,
You know,
yes.
I never talked like that. I never talked about any of nothing.
See, women don't believe that, and the reason that they don't is because they may do that, and since they are the ultimate validators, they are the ones that create the narrative on just about everything. Well, we have to be guilty of it as well, and that's not one of our shortcomings. Do we have shortcomings? Absolutely, we've got shortcomings, but that's not one of them. And I find that to be very destructive in a marriage, very destructive element in a marriage.
That's true. Now, I agree with that, and I think that is powerful. That the Beehive talk, that's powerful. Now, my last question. Well, it really isn't a question, but it's a perspective. To me, this chapter speaks to the process of moving forward and the impact that it has on your future life. This chapter is welcome to reality. So what I got from this chapter is breaking free, accepting reality, being accountable for what's about to happen, moving forward, learning through the process of relationships and the importance of the conversations with men also after the divorce takes place. And just, man, I'm excited to do chapter 3. I wish we could do it tonight, but they gotta wait on that, man. So
gotta wait on it. I understand.
Tell me the process that it made to make chapter 2, and what was your motive behind it in closing?
Very simply, there is a phase. There is it's just like when a person dies. I think there are 7 stages of grief, right? We're not talking about the grief of loss. Although there are a lot of that, right? And acceptance is one of them. I don't know what stage. I used to know them, like, numerically. But there are a lot of cultural things that men, the ones I've spoken to now, let's center that conversation on that one. The men who were very seasoned with women and the men who were not very experienced with women. There's a certain level of acceptance that comes with its own time. I don't want you, and I don't want the listening audience to think that you just wake up one day and you say, oh man, my marriage is over with. All right, let's rock and roll and move forward.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting that this reality takes time. The problem is with the divorce, you don't have time to sit in a corner with your head down, licking your wounds. You have to be active. And that's what makes divorce so difficult. You don't have the time to be counting injuries and getting physical assessments, and you have work that you have to do.
Because life is
so that's
moving.
Why it's important. Yeah, life is still moving. You still are in a legal arrangement, and notice we have yet to talk about the law, and we have yet to talk about blame. Those are conversations down the road.
Yeah.
But just as a man, you have to do some hard processing. If you take the typical masculine approach, it's going to bite you in the end later, because you can't deny your humanity. You can't do that.
Yeah. And that's like trying to out-process the process. You have to just...
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, you can't out-process the process. You got to deal with the process. I thank you for your time, Erick, man.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed the conversation as always.
I'm looking forward to discussing chapter 3. I think this was a good episode. And
great episode. Thank you for interviewing.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right.
Yes, sir.
The Trevor Jackson